Greetings and salutations to everybody out there in podcast land. This is the Judo Chop Suey Podcast, and I'm your host, Judo Dave Roman, coming back at you with another episode of this podcast. Within 2 in a month, I can't believe I'm able to do this, but I've got my reasons for that. I'm going to get into that later on in this episode. I actually have a lot to talk about, so I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to get right into it right now. And as you guys can imagine, there's only really one story that I can start this episode with, and it has nothing to do with judo directly: the freaking coronavirus. So look, at the end of my last episode in my my Afterparty segment, which I will have in this episode as well, I talked about how I thought the coronavirus story was a bit of an overreaction by the media. I still think it's an overreaction, but that doesn't mean that we can't all exercise a little bit of caution in how we interact with each other. Many organizations are taking this very seriously. The National Basketball Association has canceled their has put their season on hold until further notice, and I believe the National Hockey League is going to follow suit as well. And up in New York, in New Rochelle, they've sent the National Guard. I mean, talk about a really taking extreme measures to try and contain a virus that, I'm not quite sure how the National Guard can help contain a virus, but, well, apparently there's a lot of people smarter than me, so they'll figure it out. As for me, well, I was really excited to go to the New York Open, but that's been canceled. And I'm grateful for the tournament director, John Waller, to reach out to me directly to let me know that, instead of me finding out from, just from some news article on Judo Inside or whatever the case may be. Actually, I found out about 2 or 3 hours before John wrote me. I've got some insiders, and that person knows who that person is, and I appreciate the heads up. Now, I have gone ahead and canceled my trip to New York City. I was going to go even though the New York Open was canceled, but given really the state of the world and after the president's speech, it's probably not in my best interest to travel. I'm not really afraid of catching the coronavirus. I really am not. But I'm thinking to myself, well, what if I did end up getting it and then ended up giving it to my aunt and then she died? I mean, could I live with that, knowing that I contracted a virus and that eventually killed a family member that I love? No, I wouldn't be okay with that. And so I've decided to maybe not cancel, but postpone my trip to another date. I know there's a Steve Scott seminar happening in April. I'm not sure if I can make that because, well, at the moment, I'm not sure if getting my tickets for a refund or at least an airline credit is a one-shot deal. I mean, what if I set up a trip to go in April and we're still in lockdown? Do I still lose my money? I don't know. So for the time being, I'm going to look to get an airline credit. And if I can't get a credit, I'm going to push my trip out to sometime in May or June because New York City in the summertime is awesome. Something that just dawned on me as I'm talking about this, it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility that when I made my trip to New York City, I might have had coronavirus. I was sick for 2 months. I ended up going to the emergency room. And I got sick when I was in New York City. I mean, who knows? And look, I know people out there are going to talk about transmission rates and stuff, saying that the coronavirus transmission rate is significantly higher than the regular flu. And look, there's going to be people debating both sides of this, whether, whether I may think that a lot of people are overreacting to this, and there's a lot of people out there that think that we're not reacting enough. I don't know. I'm not here to debate that. And I'm certainly not intending to use the word overreaction as an insult. So please, if you are somebody that is extremely concerned about this, I'm not trying to insult you. We should all be reacting. But to me, by overreacting, I'm talking about those people that are buying 6 months worth of toilet paper at one time and overbuying on certain things. And I think that causes a problem in the supply chain. It certainly puts a strain on it. So that's what I really mean by overreacting. But we should be reacting. I know many other countries out there are dealing with a far more serious issue than what what we are dealing with in the United States. I know Italy has basically quarantined the entire country. Apparently, Germany has. I read something crazy, like either they think 70% of the people are going to get it, or 70% of the people already have it. Now, getting back to judo and the New York Open, it's my understanding that Israel and Poland were two of the teams that decided to pull out of the event, which kind of caused the event to get canceled, because those were. I think other teams followed suit, and the thing with Israel is that it's my understanding that anybody that does any international travel, once they get back to the country, once they get back to Israel, they are under a mandatory 2-week quarantine. So I believe the coaches and the athletes did not want to deal with that. And that's certainly understandable. I mean, lucky me, I'm able to do my work from home. So if I happen to get sick and I got, if I had to quarantine myself for 2 weeks or a month, I'd be like, hey, bring it on. And look, I'm not being serious. I hope you guys know that. So, New York Open canceled. The Rabat Grand Prix canceled. The Ekaterinburg Grand Slam canceled. In fact, all International Judo Federation events from here out to the end of April are canceled. And at this point, I got to believe the Olympics in Tokyo are at risk of being held. Because, look, judo is not the only sport that has people that are trying to qualify for the Olympic Games. I mean, all of these sports, I have to believe they have a qualification process. Now, with regards to the International Judo Federation, they have declared that they are going to extend the Olympic qualification period. So I've got an article published by the IJF stating that during an extraordinary meeting of the International Judo Federation Executive Committee organized today, which was March 10th, about the consequences of the COVID-19 crisis. The following 3 decisions have been unanimously voted to guarantee the safety of the whole judo family as well as the fairness of the sport. The Olympic qualification period will be extended until the 30th of June 2020. The Continental Championships planned in the period until the 30th of April 2020 will be postponed. All cadet and junior events are also canceled until April 30th, 2020. And I'm very glad that the IJF responded to this very quickly, because as soon as they canceled Rabat and the Ekaterinburg Grand Slam, a decision had to be made, because you effectively took away the ability for many of these athletes that are on the bubble to try and make an Olympic roster. Now, for those of you who are outside of the United States that are in other countries that may not understand what I mean by on the bubble, I'm talking about the people that may be ranked anywhere between, 18 and 20 or 19th and 25th in their divisions, where they needed a few more wins in order to get themselves into the top 18. So they're right on the outside looking in. That's what I meant by athletes that are on the bubble there. And speaking of outside of the United States, I'd like to send a special shout out to my new listener out in Austria. Thank you very much for writing. Where was I? Oh, yeah. I think the IJF made the right decision with the Rabat Grand Prix, which at the time I thought that was an overreaction, but, looking at it now, given that you have so many athletes coming in from different countries, and it's not the athletes themselves that are at risk of really being harmed by this. It's the concern that these athletes will, go home after they compete. They go home, they visit grandmama, whatever the case may be, and they give her a hug, and whoops, she's got coronavirus. Now she ends up dying while the athlete makes a full recovery. So that's kind of, I can understand from the IJF's point of view what they're trying to do there. They're trying to do their part in preventing the spread of this thing. And that's unfortunate for all of those athletes that spent thousands, whether that be dollars or euros or francs or shekels, whatever the case may be, that they planned on, they made reservations, they paid for things in advance, and now they're out of money. And I think that's really unfortunate. So anyway, I think that's all I really have on this. All the tournaments have been canceled. I don't know what domestic tournaments are going to be taking place in the United States. I don't know if the U.S. Open is at risk of being canceled at this point. Probably not, but it wouldn't shock me if they made that decision over the next month. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about coronavirus related that I just want to bring attention to. It's my understanding, based on various posts and tweets and stuff that I've read online and such, there are a lot of students out there that are planning on not paying their monthly dues for the month that the club that they belong to is closed. I would encourage you to not do that. And look, I tend to see this more happening with students of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu than Judo, and I understand that many Jiu-Jitsu business owners, they're all small businesses, relatively speaking, except for a few that are out there, both Judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They're all small businesses. So there's a lot of students out there that only look at your club membership as a business transaction and nothing more than that. I don't really agree with that point of view. And I feel it's important to support your sensei or your coaches or whatever, or whomever the case may be in that situation, your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor. It's important to continue to support these people who've given a lot of, yes, it's a business, sure, but they also are providing a great service to all of us. And it's my impression that especially when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and their high rates for club membership, that I'll just come out and say it. There's a lot of younger people and a lot of people that look at those rates and they're almost insulted that they have to pay it in order to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It becomes almost a point of contention. And like for example, there's many times that I've seen people say, "Well, I'm not cleaning the mats. I mean, I pay for a membership. Aren't they supposed to clean the mats and such?" Maybe I just have a different mentality when it comes to that kind of thing. I mean, sure, I pay club dues, but I also see the club as my second home, and I wouldn't dream of not cleaning the mats or helping with that in that regard. But there's a lot of people out there, I think a lot of people are frustrated with the high prices of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They may not come out right out and say it, but I think they are. And I think in times like this where there's a national emergency, I think there are too many people out there that are just saying, hey, this is just a business transaction, so I'm not going to pay for the month. I think you got to at least pay for the month. And yes, I completely understand and respect the fact that I'm 20 years older than the average judo and jiu-jitsu student. So I'm in a different place in my life financially. But, I mean, look, even for me, if this thing goes on where we're quarantining ourselves for 3 months plus, at that point I would have to, look to cancel my membership. But, I mean, 1 month, I don't agree with that point of view. And I think, I mean, at the end of the day, this is their means of putting food on the table. And I think the overall attitudes have to be a little bit bigger than just sole self-preservation. At this point, anyway. I mean, look, these are exceptional times that we're living in right now. I was just commenting to my wife the other day that I can't think of a story that has had this kind of global impact in such a short period of time in all the years that I've been living. Yeah, 9/11 changed the world, but that didn't change the world almost overnight. I mean, this is within a matter of a couple of weeks, so many things have changed. I mean, in my lifetime, apart from 9/11, this is, I can't think of a bigger story than this. And like I said, these are exceptional times, and I just don't think we should be pulling out of our memberships to a club, especially if this thing is only going to last a month. And look, for those of you that take offense to this, please keep in mind, I don't mean everybody. I know there's many people out there that work hourly jobs and their businesses are cutting back hours because of this thing. So you're not getting paid. And for in your situation, you might be stuck between choosing, am I going to eat tonight or am I going to pay my jiu-jitsu dues? Well, look, in that case, eat, cancel your dues. I get that. I'm talking about the people out there, and there's many of them out there that have the means to keep paying a monthly due to jiu-jitsu and support that club, and they choose not to do it. I'm not talking about the people that, that have to make the choice between a roof over your head and food on the table versus jiu-jitsu. So anyway, I got to move on to other topics. So with that, I got a bit of sad news to report. Yukimitsu Kano, the grandson of Jigoro Kano, has passed away. The International Judo Federation put out an article stating, "It is with deep sorrow that we inform you that Honorary President of the Kodokan Judo Institute and All Japan Judo Federation, Kano Yukimitsu, has passed away on March 8th, 2020 at a hospital in Tokyo due to pneumonia. He was 87 years old. Yukimitsu Kano was much more than his titles. He was the grandson of Jigoro Kano, the founder of judo." Who does not know that name, Kano, especially in the judo world? Without Master Jigoro Kano, the sport simply would not exist. In 1882, he created judo when he was only 22 years old. 135 years later, judo becoming a major Olympic sport and Paralympic sport and an educational tool for the youth of the world. While constantly evolving, it has remained committed to the values that Kano has defined. During the summer of 2017, the International Judo Federation had the privilege of meeting Yukimitsu Kano. In that exclusive interview, he recalled memories of his grandfather and explained his own vision of judo, as Mr. Kano Yukimitsu has also played an important role in judo in Japan as well as the rest of the world. Mr. Kano explained that when he said in front of his grandfather that he wanted to find a role model and become like that person later, the founder of judo replied, "You should not try to be like somebody else. You are who you are." This is a perfect illustration of how judo can help build better citizens to grow a better society. Jigoro Kano was not only teaching the theory, he made sure all could understand the fundamentals, and he wanted his students to put his teachings into practice in society. Let's see. The whole judo family and the IJF expressed their deepest condolences to Mr. Kano's family, relatives, and friends, to the Kodokan Institute, and to the All Japan Judo Federation. Only Mr. Kano's close relatives and Kodokan employees will attend his funeral services, with Akashi Kano, his eldest daughter, serving as the chief mourner. Later, a joint funeral will be held by the Kodokan and All Japan Judo Federation. Words of condolences should be addressed to the email address intl@kodokan.org. And then the article goes on to show the profile of Mr. Kano. He was the president of the Kodokan between April of 1980 and March of 2009. Or maybe I'm misreading that. I thought he was the president for almost 30 years of the All Japan Judo Federation. It also says here, between September of 1980 and October of 1995, he was the president of the Judo Union of Asia. And in April 2009, he was the honorary president of the Kodokan and All Japan Judo Federation. So it seems like for 29 years, he was the actual president, and then he became an honorary president in April of 2009. So there you go. Rest in peace, Mr. Kano. Part of me wonders if his daughter does judo, or does Jigoro Kano have any descendants that currently do judo? That'd be interesting to find out. I don't know. So continuing on, I want to talk about a story that was shared to me via my Twitter from a Mr. Hans Van Essen of JudoInside.com. So Hans had a write. Ooh, my voice cracked there. So Hans had a write up on a German judoka by the name of Timo Cavelius, and this write up was a reference to an interview done by Bento magazine in Germany on judoka Timo Cavelius, And the headline of the article goes, "There is no place for homophobia today, not even in professional sports." The rest of the headline goes, "In an interview, the national team fighter explains why his coming out made him even stronger." Now, I thought this was very fascinating. I don't think too much about LGBTQ issues when it comes to sports and judo in particular. So this one really caught my attention, well, mostly because Hans shared it to me. But this was just an aspect of sports that I really don't consider very often, and not because I have any biases against a group of people, because I don't. It's just, well, when I look at any athlete, their sexual orientation is the very, very last thing on my mind. But it doesn't make the issue any less important, so I would like to share with you this article that I read. Starts off as follows. Timo Cavelius is 23 years old and is number 42 in the world rankings in his weight class. And he competes in the under 73 kilo and under 81 kilo division. As a member of the German national team, he flies around the world for competitions and training camps, and this year he would like to get a place to move up for the Olympic Games. Timo is an exceptional talent in judo, but also an exception when it comes to dealing with his sexuality as an athlete. 4 years ago, he came out as gay, without any scandals or major problems. Why is the top sport still considered homophobic? Now, I just want to be clear that this article is a translation from German, and I think the Google translator does a very good job with the translation. But if I use sentence structures or figures of speech that is not really common in American English, this is why, because it's coming straight from a translation. So continuing on, Bento magazine asks, Timo, before we met, I went through the internet. I found something about your sporting success, but almost nothing about your private life, let alone you coming out. Why is that? Timo answers, for me, my sporting achievements are paramount. When the media reports about me, it's primarily about medals, successes, or setbacks. A well-known German tabloid actually wanted to make a big story about my sexuality, but because I can't tell a sad or shocking story about my coming out, they dropped the topic. Well, that's a shame. Bento magazine asks, does that mean you had no problems with your coming out? Timo responds, I think I went through the same emotional process as other homosexual boys of that age. When I realized at 13 that I was much more interested in other men than women, I didn't admit it to myself for a long time and thought that it would only be a phase. When I moved to the Haus der Athleten in Munich at the age of 15 to concentrate on sports, I had the opportunity to meet boys in the big city for the first time. From then on, it was clear to me that I was gay. I had my first relationship and started talking to friends and family about it. At the time, I actually accepted it as a normal part of me, and that's great. Why did you only come out in front of your teammates sometime later? Timo responds, in sports, the topic was too taboo for a long time. Not only because I had read horror stories about the coming outs of athletes in the media. In my team, we were all pubescent boys who wanted to prove their masculinity. Judo is also a very physical sport. After all, you throw each other throughout the area and are incredibly close in ground combat. I was afraid that the others would no longer take me seriously. At some point, there were rumors from my teammates that I could be gay. I never traded with girls, and when a boy stayed with me, the others sometimes noticed. I remember this time as extremely hard because not only I had the pressure to graduate from high school and do my best in sports, but also this secret that I carried around with me. I noticed how my body became stiffer during training and my performances stagnated because I was tense all day. Bento magazine asked, then why did you decide to come out? I had the kind of key experience when I first spoke to our sports psychologist about my sexuality. We actually worked with a psychologist to develop rituals and learn techniques for relieving pressure in combat. When I told her about being gay, she didn't try to push me in any direction, but made it clear to me that the decision was up to me entirely. And it was true. I could decide for myself how to deal with this. The fear of coming out came from my side. I had to overcome it with friends and family. My quote-unquote public coming out with my teammates was more or less a short-circuit reaction. I simply made a Facebook post in which I cleaned up the rumors, saying, Yes, I'm gay, but that doesn't change who I am as a person. Of course, I was scared about how my teammates would react, but apart from the classic, how's that going with you questions, they were all totally cool with it. And that's wonderful. Bento magazine asks, so then what happened next? Timo responds, I still remember that I always took a shower alone for the first few days after my coming out. Somehow I thought it would be uncomfortable for the other guys on my team, but they said on their own initiative that it makes no difference to them whether I am gay or not. In the end, sexuality in sports simply has no place. Bento, there are always queer athletes who campaign for LGBTQ rights or point out abuses in homophobic countries. How do you deal with your role as a queer athlete in a national team? Timo responds, when fighting abroad, my sexuality doesn't matter to me. It's about sport. I conform to the rules of the country. I wouldn't turn on a guy on the street in Russia or hang my sexuality on the Big Bell in Abu Dhabi. But I don't see it as my job to spread a certain message internationally. I wear the Federal Eagle on my suit and represent Germany in sport. My goal is to win the competitions. My opponents will then notice that I am completely normal. And the final question from Bento. Your sexual orientation doesn't seem to be a big issue for you anymore. Where does this self-confidence come from? Timo responds, moving out at the age of 15, shining at tournaments when I was young, and also fighting my own personal battles with myself made me stronger. I am also a member of the Bavarian Police's top sports promotion. When I am not fighting or training, I am on duty in uniform and I am responsible. The fact that I have to prove myself again and again has made my coming out easier. If someone says something stupid to me today, I have no problem standing up for myself. I don't want to deny other gay boys their problems, but I still believe that many people are afraid of coming out themselves. The moment I took my own destiny, nothing could happen to me. My creed is very clear. There is no longer any room for homophobia today, not even in professional sports. And you know what? I just think this is a wonderful article to me because, for one, I'm so used to news articles and interviews and such, always fishing for some kind of an angle. And it's really nice to see an article like this because there's no real motive other than interviewing a gay athlete about his experiences competing on the world tour or in his day-to-day life. And I thought the article or the magazine did a great job just asking questions, getting responses, and providing no opinion or spin or really an agenda. I mean, it's refreshing to see that because I tell you what, for those of you who are outside of the United States, it seems like every article I read has some kind of agenda, whether it's to push a certain cause or to sway opinion or whatever the case may be. It's finally refreshing for me to see something that's just straightforward. And speaking of straightforward, I would love to be or I would love to see athletes as a whole and not so much entertainers anymore, but certainly athletes, male athletes, be able to come out, admit that they're gay without any repercussions. You know, and I think I read an article or a statistic that 10% of the global population are gay, and I would venture to guess that also applies to professional athletes at the highest levels as well. And there's many probably, living in fear and living in, depressed states, not being able to fully accept who they are or not being able to live the life that they ultimately want to live. And I thought Hans's write-up on this story on judoinside.com was equally as interesting because he made a point that, I can't speak to the experience personally, but it seems there's an appearance and there's a overall feeling that if you're a woman and you're a lesbian, that is perfectly acceptable. So, for example, at least in the United States, there's probably a lot of women in the WNBA, for example, that are out as lesbian, and nobody cares. But if an NFL athlete or an NBA athlete who was a superstar were to come out as homosexual, that would make front page news and and people would have really strong opinions one way or the other. I would fully support that athlete, but much like Timo, I wouldn't be out there retweeting every single story about about the athlete that came out, or have any further expectations of that athlete other than performing their job on the field of play to the highest level that they can. It kind of reminds me of a story about America's first female astronaut, Sally Ride. She was gay, and she didn't let the world know about that until after she passed away. And in fact, it wasn't Sally that revealed that in her own obituary. It was her partner, her long-term partner. And, I thought some of the reactions out there were wholly unfair, coming from the LGBTQ community, saying that she should have put herself out there and be some kind of champion for gay rights. And I don't think it has to be that way. And I think the way Timo Cavelius is handling this as a public figure is the correct way. He's an athlete. He's not a quote-unquote gay athlete. He's just an athlete. And I think the way that he's handling this is very admirable. There's one last thing judo-related that I wanted to cover on this episode, and that's an Android app that I have been evaluating and I downloaded a few days ago. It's called the Judokai. Actually, I take that back. It's just called Judokai, not the Judokai. And this is by far one of the finest Android applications for judo techniques that I have ever seen in my life. It's probably the best, specific for judo. I haven't seen them all, but this is definitely one of the best and finest and most well put together apps that I've ever seen. It's fantastic. And I know this application is available on iPhones and Android operating systems. So it's an application that you can download it for free, and they show the entire judo syllabus in this product. And the thing is that and look, to be clear, nobody's asked me to promote this thing. This is just one of those things that I feel like sharing with you guys. So I'm not getting any kickbacks or anything like that. They've got 4 sections for Nagewaza, Katamewaza, and the basics. And there's an about section as well. But when you install the application, you'll get a sampling of each section of techniques. So if you want to see, which techniques they offer for Tewaza, they give you Ippon and Nagi for free. And by looking at that, you can take a look at the video, and it goes into exceptional detail. The lighting is fantastic. The studio that they're recording in, it's just really well done with the black backdrop and the reddish mats, and the camera angles are excellent. Now, I don't know if the pay version offers audio, but currently what I have in the free version, there is no audio, so you have to be able to pay attention to the video. And like I've always said for all videos, I think, I know these people who content creators are going to get mad at me, but I think videos are a bit overrated for beginners and novices. I think if you don't know what you're looking for, they're not very helpful. And the key word there is they are not very helpful. They are helpful, but I don't see, for me, it's worth it for me because I do know what I'm looking for specifically when I look at videos. So I think videos can be very helpful for somebody who really knows what they're looking for. But for the beginner, I don't think they're as helpful unless in the video the level of instruction. So for example, I think Steve Scott does a tremendous job with all of his instructional videos because they're each about 10 minutes long on a single technique. That's a lot of time to spend on a single technique. And that's typically, when I was coming up through the ranks and before my coach passed away, we would spend, he would spend about 7 to 10 minutes explaining a technique, and we would work that technique for about 3 to 4 weeks, just that one technique and different variations and such. We didn't jump around from technique to technique on each class. We focus on specific things and fundamentals and concepts and things like that. And so I think the work that Steve Scott does is great in that regard, especially for beginners. But for something like this is an excellent video or an excellent thing to use as more as a reference, if you will. So with this application, Judokai, to unlock all of the features, it's $32.99. That's US dollars. I don't know how that translates to euros. You can download the application and see for that yourself, or francs or shekels. I don't know. Whatever your currency rate is, I'm sure there's it's going to cost the equivalent of almost $33. Why don't they just go $33, huh? $32.99. You know, in my bank accounts, I like trying to spend money, especially when I'm going to get gas. I try and only put in $20. I don't put in $19.99. I mean, that's absurd. Just charge me $33. That's I don't want $32.99. I mean, why do they do that? Are they appealing to the people that say, "Man, I ain't spending $33 on this, but man, if this was $32.99, I'm all over it." I don't know why businesses do that, but this one does. Everything else out there does. I mean, you're getting fuel. What's 9/10 of a cent? I don't pay 9/10 of a penny on anything. Well, except for fuel, apparently. So, speaking of which, have you guys seen? I don't know what it's like in other parts of the country in the United States, but this is the first time right now down the road I can get fuel for under $2 a gallon. So that's I haven't seen that price in a number of years. It's been a long time. Anyway, Judokai, $32.99 on iTunes or Apple or Google Play Store or whatever the case may be. You can also buy certain sections for a much cheaper price. So if you just want to see the Sutemi Waza, for example, it's only $1.49. If you just want the section on Tewaza or Shimewaza, Tewaza is like $5.99, Koshiwaza is $3.99, Ashiwaza is $8.99, which makes sense because Ashiwaza has the most amount of techniques. Yoko Sutemi Waza is $6.49, Osaikomi Waza is $3.99, Shimewaza is $4.49, and Kansetsu Waza is $3.99. And I think that's neat. I like that they break it down, or you could buy the whole thing for $32.99. So anyway, go ahead and check it out. It's at least download it for free and see for yourself. I think they did a great job with this. It's probably the best mobile application I have seen for judo in my life. All right, so I'm going to wrap things up here. I think I've covered what I want to cover. I know I said I was going to bring somebody on in my last episode, but I'm going to shoot for my next episode. I swear, I know you're listening. I promise you, I'm going to schedule a time for you to come on the podcast. I promise. That person knows who I'm talking about. And I don't want to give it away, because if I do and that person's not on the next episode for whatever reason, then I'm going to look like a fool. And I don't want to do that, because I already do that most of the days anyway. All right, enough of that. So I'm going to end it here. I hope you all have a good day. I hope you all have a great rest of the week. Well, I normally say train hard right around here, but I guess not too many people are training. So stay safe out there. And until next time, I'm out.
Oppan Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Oppan Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Oppan Gangnam Style. Hey, sexy lady. Oppan Gangnam Style. Hey, sexy lady.
The Afterparty starts in 15 minutes.
All right, I'm not waiting 15 minutes. I'm going to get this party started right now. But before I do that, I want to take a moment to kind of explain how it is that I seemingly watch all of these television shows, because I'm not a type of person that sits there and watches a ton of TV. Well, I do and I don't. I tend to find times whether it's early in the morning or very late at night to watch some of these shows. So it's not like I sit down at 6:30, 7 o'clock and I'm binge watching television for 4 hours. Usually it's right around the time that I'm about to head to sleep, and I may watch a single show, or I may watch maybe 2 episodes of a show late at night. We're talking about 9:30, 10 o'clock onwards, and then I also may watch something early in the morning, because some days I wake up at 5:30, and I may watch a show while I'm having my coffee and just kind of getting my day going. It's kind of like how I like to start my days off kind of like that. And then every once in a while, if we're talking about shows where I don't need to actually watch, because it's more of a drama and not a lot of action, sometimes I just plug in my phone in my car and turn it face down, but just listen to the program because I find the dialogue interesting and whatnot. For example, I don't need to actually watch House of Cards to appreciate, all of the wonderful dialogue that was in that show. So with that being said, I want to start off talking about a show that I started and then I basically stopped right away. Hunters on Amazon. What a disappointment for me. And the show was interesting enough to me, but I have certain rules when it comes to television shows, and you can't fool me with this kind of stuff. So this is almost embarrassing, but I'm going to put it out there. In the beginning of television shows, you know how they give the ratings of the show, like if it's TVMA, so I'm sitting there at the first episode of Hunters, and the black screen comes up telling you that it's TVMA and telling you why it's TVMA. So I see, typical, violence, adult language. But then when I see nudity, I always joke around with my wife. I say, hey, how about that? So I end up watching the show. It's kind of interesting and stuff. It's actually pretty cool. The premise of it's pretty cool, and I guess it's based on a true story. However, there's a scene toward the end of the show where this old lady is in the bathroom, and she's looking like she's about to take a shower, and I'm thinking to myself, oh no, please stop. No, don't do it. Sure enough, she disrobes, and the nudity that was promised to me at the beginning of the episode ended up being this old, overweight woman who ends up getting killed in the shower. I can't go there. I can't do it. So after about 5 minutes worth of dry heaving and the show ending, the next night we decided to watch the second episode of Hunters. So then, again, the TVMA thing, it says language, violence, nudity, and strong sexual content. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, finally, this is not bad. Actually, I'm not big on sex in television shows. I think it's a filler. I think it's a waste of time. I actually don't like it. Because honestly, in reality, 30 to 60 seconds worth of screen time, that's a lot of time. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of plot lines that can be advanced and such. And when you waste that with, sex scenes or lovemaking scenes or whatever the case may be, it's a waste of time. I used to hate when Game of Thrones used to have sex scenes because very rarely did it advance the plot. The only one that it advanced the plot or it made sense was really the very first episode at the end of Season 1, Episode 1 with Jaime Lannister and Cersei Lannister. That made sense, but most of the other scenes, it was just filler. It was a waste of time. And then, when the episode is like, 49, 50 minutes and they're wasting, a minute or two on scenes like that, it's a complete waste. I hated that stuff. But, with Hunters, I'm like, okay, I always joke around saying, hey, strong sexual content, can't wait for that. But, so then we get to the scene, it's 2 dudes. And look, I'm all for LGBTQ rights, totally, 100%. I just don't want to see it any more than I want to see you taking a dump. Honestly, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see a young dude slamming his wang into an old dude's backside. I don't want to see it. I don't need to see it. I could live my whole life without seeing that ever again. And same goes for men and women in these shows. I can go my whole life without seeing another sex scene in a television show, because if I really want to see that, there's plenty of online sites for me to do that. So Hunters is off my list. You want to jerk me around once and trick me with an old fat woman, getting naked in a shower? Okay, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So I'm done with the show. Can't watch it anymore.
Come on, get out of here!
So there's another show that I've been watching that I'm embarrassed to say that I watch this stuff, but I can't help it. There's this show called 90 Day Fiancé. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying this. I watch it. There's this new one, 90 Day Fiancé, Before the 90 Days. Like, my wife loves this show, and this is the first season that I'm all in on this one. Unlike all the other seasons, I kind of, it's when she's watching 90 Day Fiancé, that's when I tell her, hey, I'm going to be upstairs recording an episode. You do you down here. But this one, I don't know. The freak show factor on this is at a level that I've not seen before. And I'm hooked. I'm watching this show. It's like a car accident on the side of the road where nobody's dead, but you still got to see what the heck happened. It's exactly what this show is for me. I'm not embarrassed to say it. I am watching 90 Day Fiancé before the 90 days. I'm proud of it. You know what? I'm not embarrassed. I'm proud of it. Not really. I'm not really proud of it, but I am watching it, especially because of the short guy with no neck. I mean, that's kind of interesting to me. I don't know why. Gosh. All right, what else? Oh yeah. So I am watching, I haven't finished this movie, but I've started watching this movie about a week ago. It's called The Velocipastor. It's about a pastor that turns into a velociraptor and like protects the innocent and some stuff like that. So I've watched maybe about 30 minutes of it. It's one of the cheesiest things that I've ever seen, but Velocipastor. I love the title. I had to watch it, and the acting is horrible. The special effects is like really bad, but I can't help it. It's cheese. It's horror. It's always, I guess it's supposed to be horror, but it's cheesy horror. All right, let's see what else. Oh, I've talked about the coronavirus at the beginning of this episode. So the after party is typically the last segment that I do before I wrap things up and then, schedule this for a release. My company is going 100% remote. And I want to talk about this for a second. This is something that I believe companies should have done a decade ago at least. There is no reason why so many people have to trudge into an office to do a job that they can do remotely. And I think, when it comes to infrastructure and traffic and roads and really pollution, you want to call it greenhouse gases or global warming, imagine how much better this world would be in terms of those topics. And I'm not making this political. I'm telling you I'm not. But just the strain and stresses of our infrastructure would be greatly reduced if companies, especially IT companies, would just get rid of this 20th century mindset when it comes to the workplace and allow people to work from home most of the time. I mean, goodness gracious, like for myself, there is nothing that I can't do from home when it comes to my job. Now, I'm not saying that we should just be 100% remote and never interact with each other, but how good would it be if the majority of people who, work in call centers or do IT or whatever, obviously not everybody can work from home and do that job, and maybe not everybody's as productive as they are at home, but I think companies should be given incentives to allow their associates to work from home without any repercussions from upper management. I know a few years ago, the CEO of Yahoo ended up making people who would normally work from home come into the office. And I just think that's just a backwards mentality. there is value to having face-to-face interactions. Like, I would never, if my boss is in town, I wouldn't work from home. I would be in the office. If we had a meeting that we needed to discuss some kind of significant application change or something, that should be done face-to-face. Interviews should be done face-to-face. But really, most of my day, there's a lot of routine involved with it, and I don't need to be in the office for that. And one less car on the road, if there were 50,000 people, or especially in my area, if there was 100,000 less cars on the roads every morning because most people are working remotely, that would be a really good thing, especially in this area. And that way, all the people, like teachers and police officers and construction workers, plumbers, air conditioner guys, etc., they don't have to deal with the BS commute and getting stuck in long, traffic jams because everybody else is going into the office or coming home from the office. So because of the coronavirus, my company is looking to go remote for the time being for all of the associates, because I was busy a few days ago constructing laptops for them. And that's how it should be. So anyway, that's going to be it for me. Talk to you all later.